You walk down a busy city street. You catch a distinct skunky smell. You see the glowing green cross of a modern dispensary lighting up the dark American sidewalk. It feels completely normal, but it triggers a very specific thought. You probably think of politics or endless courtroom debates for your entire life. Society has treated this green flower as a dangerous rebel that needs strict federal control. It is heavily regulated, but the real answer behind it is far stranger. This plant is ancient, and it did not just casually join human history, it actually helped engineer human civilization from the ground up. Your body is uniquely prepared for it, because your brain was biologically wired for this specific plant before you were even born. Everything is upside down. The story you know is a tiny, distorted fraction of reality. To understand the truth, you have to completely forget the modern American world and travel back 12,000 years to ancient East Asia. Your ancestors are doing something incredibly dangerous and completely new. They are stopping their nomadic hunting to experiment with a radical new technology called agriculture. One of the very first wild plants they actively decide to cultivate is cannabis, a choice driven by survival. Imagine you're a farmer trying to survive a brutal winter. You stumble upon a plant that can be twisted into incredibly strong rope, woven into warm clothing, and eaten for dense nutrition. It also works as a powerful medicine for your aching joints, serving as the ultimate biological Swiss Army knife. Modern researchers sequenced over 100 distinct cannabis genomes to pinpoint the exact origin of domestic cannabis to the early Neolithic period. They proved it was foundational. For thousands of years, there was absolutely no difference between the hemp used for heavy ropes and the marijuana used to get stoned. They were the exact same species. It took thousands of years of evolution to separate them. Early humans eventually began selectively breeding the plant into two different varieties around 4,000 years ago. They pushed one lineage toward durable fibers and the other toward psychoactive THC. But in the very beginning, it was all just one incredibly useful tool. Civilizations slowly expanded across continents. This versatile plant hitchhiked across the ancient world along the legendary Silk Road, alongside expensive spices and fine silk. The people trading it were not just making strong clothes. They were unlocking altered states of consciousness high in the freezing air of the Pamir Mountains. The altitude is crushing in the year 500 before the birth of Christ. In an ancient cemetery called Jerzankal, archaeologists carefully excavated 8 separate tombs and found something that completely rewrote the history books. Inside these frozen graves were 10 wooden braziers filled with burnt, charred stones. When researcher Dr. Yimin Yang analyzed the residue from these ancient rocks, the chemical lab results showed a massive spike in cannabinol. That is a distinct chemical signature. It is the exact compound left behind when you burn high-potency THC, proving these ancient mourners were not burning weak, wild hemp. They were burning incredibly potent strains. Plants growing in high altitudes suffer from extreme cold and defend themselves by producing massive amounts of sticky cannabinoids. Those ancient people understood this biological defense mechanism perfectly well and utilized it to its full potential. There were no glass pipes back then. The ancient method was visceral and completely raw. They heated heavy stones until they glowed red hot and threw entire handfuls of the potent plant directly onto the coals, so everyone could deeply inhale the thick smoke together. They brought harps into the tombs and performed heavy rituals. Scientists describe these as intense ceremonies of fire, music, and hallucinogenic smoke. They were using the potent plant to enter a deep trance and commune directly with the dead. This was not an isolated incident in human history. A legendary Greek historian named Herodotus traveled near Central Asia around this exact same era. He encountered a fearsome group of nomadic warriors known as the Scythians who had a brutal reputation and a love for this plant. They were terrifying warriors who rode fast horses and fired deadly arrows. Herodotus watched these fierce warriors build small, enclosed tents and toss cannabis flowers onto red-hot stones inside the cramped spaces. He wrote that the smoke was far stronger than any Greek vapor bath and that the hardened warriors literally screamed with joy. For centuries, European historians mocked him and assumed he was exaggerating. Then, in the late 1940s, a Soviet archaeologist named Sergei Rudenko traveled into the frozen wastelands of Siberia. He excavated deep tombs that had been completely sealed in solid permafrost for over 2,000 years. Right beside the tattooed mummies, he found wooden tent frames, bronze vessels, burnt stones, and cannabis seeds. The Greek historian had not invented a single detail about the Scythian rituals. These smoking kits were heavily worn from years of constant daily use. Years later, deep in the rugged Caucasus Mountains, scientists found solid gold cups in another Scythian tomb. Chemical tests revealed a potent mixture of dried cannabis and heavy opium. Ancient warriors were casually mixing powerful psychedelics and narcotics in solid gold chalices over 2,000 years ago. Now, let us travel to Western China. Archaeologists opened a deep grave holding a man with European features who was around 45 years old. He was buried with his harp, a set of horse reins, and nearly 2 pounds of potent marijuana. To be scientifically exact, it was 789 grams. The most shocking part is that after 27 centuries underground, the plant material was still green and contained active traces of THC. This man was an ancient shaman, and the massive stash of weed was a parting gift for his journey into the afterlife. Every ancient culture worshipped this specific weed. Look at ancient Israel, where archaeologists recently examined a 2,700-year-old shrine in Tel Arad. They found 2 separate stone altars. One altar contained frankincense, which was a very standard religious offering for the time. But the other altar was packed completely full of potent cannabis. The priests had intentionally mixed the weed with animal dung to make the plant burn incredibly slowly. It released a steady, intoxicating stream of smoke directly into the enclosed temple, perfectly calibrated to leave anyone breathing the air completely stoned. They used the psychoactive smoke to elevate their minds and step closer to the divine. In India, it is considered sacred. The ancient Hindu text called the Atharva Veda directly listed cannabis as one of the 5 most sacred plants on earth. Shiva, one of the most powerful gods in Hinduism, is literally known as the Lord of Bhang. Bhang is a potent, intoxicating drink made by vigorously blending cannabis leaves with warm milk and rich spices. Legend states that Shiva swallowed a terrifying poison to save the universe and then calmed his agonizing pain with this mixture. Even today, 3,000 years later, people still prepare and drink this identical green beverage during massive religious festivals like Holi. Every ancient culture that encountered this plant immediately found a profound reason to keep it. This is not a coincidence. It is an evolutionary inevitability deeply embedded in your own physical biology. Your body was already perfectly waiting for cannabis long before your ancestors ever touched the plant. In the mid-20th century, a brilliant scientist named Raphael Mechoulam discovered something profound hiding inside your own head. Your brain naturally produces a specialized molecule called anandamide, often called the bliss molecule. The name is derived from the ancient Sanskrit word ananda, which translates directly to deep joy and supreme bliss. Your body manufactures this chemical completely on its own to help regulate your mood, memory, and appetite. By pure biological coincidence, the THC molecule produced by the cannabis plant is shaped almost exactly like your natural anandamide. It is a perfect match. THC fits flawlessly into the exact same chemical receptors in your human nervous system. It acts as a master skeleton key for a lock your body already had perfectly installed since the dawn of time. We did not just blindly choose to smoke it. Human biology had already left the back door wide open for centuries. Ancient doctors used this key to achieve absolute miracles. Around the year 200 in ancient China, a legendary doctor named Hua Tuo meticulously mixed raw cannabis with strong wine to create a powerful anesthetic. He gave it to his patients and performed complex abdominal surgeries while they felt absolutely no pain. He invented reliable surgical anesthesia almost 2,000 years before modern doctors even dreamed it was naturally possible. But Hua Tuo made powerful enemies. He crossed paths with a brutal warlord named Cao Cao, who demanded the doctor stay as his personal medical servant. Hua Tuo refused because he wanted to treat the common people, so the insulted warlord ordered his immediate execution. Sitting in his dark cell, Hua Tuo tried to hand his brilliant medical scrolls to a terrified guard, but the guard refused. The ancient secret of cannabis anesthesia died right there when he burned his own life's work. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the Congo, a famously aggressive tribe discovered cannabis and did something totally unprecedented. They entirely stopped fighting violent wars. They completely reorganized their entire tribal society around the peaceful consumption of the plant and changed their name to the Bena Riamba, meaning the sons of hemp. They chose pure friendship and transformed their brutal territory into a new peaceful sanctuary they explicitly called Lubuku. Their standard greeting became the word moyo, which simultaneously meant both hemp and life itself. For hundreds of years, this incredibly useful plant was just a mundane, deeply respected part of everyday human existence across the globe. The shift into a criminal street drug happened recently in America. Long before it was viewed as a dangerous substance, cannabis physically held the modern world together. The massive wooden ships of the early explorers relied entirely on strong hemp fibers for heavy ropes, giant sails, and durable rigging. When early European colonists arrived in America, planting hemp seeds was just as normal and essential as planting fields of common wheat. The early Virginia Assembly even passed strict laws making its cultivation a legal requirement for citizens. American farmers were legally forced to produce it. Then, the 1930s arrived. A powerful man named Harry Anslinger became the first commissioner of the newly formed Federal Bureau of Narcotics and ruled with an iron fist. He needed a cultural enemy to justify his department's budget, so he deliberately tied the use of cannabis to marginalized communities. He aggressively targeted the vibrant new jazz music scene, calling it satanic and relentlessly hunting down the talented musicians who played it. Then he executed a brilliant, devious branding trick to terrify the American public. He aggressively stopped calling the plant cannabis or hemp, which were words every American farmer knew and trusted. He started calling it marijuana because the word sounded heavily foreign and threatening to white American ears. He compiled a massive folder of fake police reports linking the plant to violent crime and severe insanity. In the process, he completely ignored the science. He asked dozens of medical experts for their opinions, and the vast majority clearly stated it was completely safe. Anslinger ignored every single one of them and only listened to the one doctor who agreed with his crusade. By 1937, the federal government passed a devastating law that effectively eradicated the plant from American soil. Decades later, President Richard Nixon placed cannabis on the strict Schedule I list alongside deadly heroin. A top Nixon advisor named John Ehrlichman later confessed in a shocking interview that the strict ban was never truly about protecting public health. The Nixon White House used marijuana to intentionally criminalize the anti-war left and the black community. They weaponized the law to kick down doors, break up meetings, and permanently lock away their political rivals. This ancient plant has faithfully accompanied human beings for roughly 12,000 years, yet it has been illegal in America for less than a single century. That timeline represents less than 1% of our shared history. For the other 99% of human existence, this vital plant was simply always there to provide food, medicine, and spiritual guidance. Remember that ancient shaman buried in the harsh deserts of western China. The people who loved him most packed nearly 2 pounds of fresh green flower into his grave to ensure his soul was safe. They respected the plant deeply, so the next time you walk down a busy city street and see the glowing green cross of a modern dispensary, take a moment to pause. You are not just smelling a controversial modern political debate, you are smelling the very foundation of human civilization.